You said Europe. Now
Hmm
you and your wife are in Seattle? You're trying to close in
Yeah, we're in the
Seattle?
Seattle area. Yeah.
Nice.
hmm Mm. Yeah,
Is the
it's
snow as bad there as it is here? I'm in Boston and it's literally snowing right now. Again.
nah, man. Nah, we are lucky to see snow here. We are lucky to see snow. I'm a New England boy at heart. I grew up in Connecticut, so
I didn't
I
know
know
that.
what snow looks like. Yep, that's right. Most of the early years of my life, and
Huh.
but no, I've been living in Seattle for about a decade, I guess. We had a very abnormal winter, which I guess is still sort of ending. I don't really know. I mostly stay inside, but for the whole week between Christmas and New Year, we had snow here in Seattle. It was like a little like a white Christmas miracle, and the cool thing about it is, it's gonna go away. I think if you live at higher elevations, it gets to be a bigger part of your life, but if you live, like, in the city, it's no.
Yeah, yeah. I've I grew up in Florida, so I had never seen snow before I had come
Ah.
to New England. And before I came to New England, I had lived in the Middle East for a while. So
Oh,
it was like super hot at what 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun is just
yeah.
bearing down.
Shit.
It's crazy. But then I go to New England and it's my first snow ever, and I'm in flip flops trying to like shovel. It was
That's
crazy.
that's a that's a beautiful thing to imagine. There's something humbling about snow, especially when there's enough of it that you gotta break out the shovel.
Yeah.
It's surprising how heavy it gets, right?
That's crazy. It's so crazy, man. The the first time it comes down, it's all powdery. It's really nice. I'm like, oh man, this is pretty cool. And then 3 4 days later, it's like it's like rock. And the
Crusty old
ice,
crap.
dude.
It's like
The ice is
scratching your car and
the
sliding
ice
all
is
over the
my
place.
nemesis. I can't tell you how many battles I've lost with the ice and their camouflaging of the cement.
Mm. The last time I was in Seattle, not Seattle, sorry, Boston. Oh boy, that was a long time ago. One of the last times I was in Boston, I had an epic slip and fall on the ice. So I sympathize.
Well, all right. Hey everybody. This is StratSide number 5. Made it to 5 already. And I say already, it's been over a year. But today is a different one. Normally, I come at you with all sorts of data. I have something I'm excited to share about. But now it's time for me to share something exciting, but the who rather than the what. And my illustrious guest today, Deeg, there's a lot you could say about Deeg. And no matter what label, what nomenclature you apply, I mean, if you're Commander Serious, you say Deeg is the PlanetSide 2 Shaman. If you're Lex, then you say that he is a light assault that's never seen the inside of a base because he's too busy jetpacking everywhere. And if you're Shockter, then you say that Deeg has great videos that I love to treat almost like ASMR as I drift off into the netherworld of sleeping. And no matter what you think, no matter whatever label you want to ascribe to him, there's no doubt that the Deegster has had an impact on PlanetSide 2, and not just PlanetSide 2, by the way. He has over 64 videos at this point. That's in excess of 125, 175 hours thereabouts. You know his content, you've seen it before, and I personally have a great appreciation and respect for just how deep he dives into things. He's a lover of player interactions, and that's what first caught my eye whenever I first started watching him way back, over a year ago, I think now. And is when he used to have basement side chats, and now it's the Deeg Podcast. And he's explored culture threads, he's explored player interaction threads, he's talked about Guild Wars, PlanetSide 2, WoW, just the elements of gaming and how they impact our lives, how they motivate us as players. Deeg is definitely one of the deep thinkers I personally have a huge amount of respect for. I definitely have been wanting to bring him on in some sort of get to know Deeg / tell us your thoughts. The interview master himself is now being interviewed. Deeg, welcome to the channel.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you, Lanzer. I'm excited about this. We've been talking about it. Yeah, I've been telling you I'm excited about it. I still am excited about it. Thank you for the extremely kind words, of course. I really appreciate that. It's a high compliment to suggest that I would be of any relevance in the gaming community or PlanetSide or anywhere else. I think that I've been very clear and many times in the past that this whole thing, this whole podcast and Basement Side Deeg Podcast or whatever I've called it at various points has all been some kind of an effort to express the demons, to try to figure out where I'm going. It's sort of a vehicle, you know, and it's been a wild ride. But yeah,
Yeah, you've covered a
thank you
lot
again
of
for the
ground.
invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak for myself. I won't speak for the whole community, of course, but I'll speak for myself that you've definitely had an impact on me in terms of just opening my mind to different perspectives. Sometimes I haven't delved too deep into different topics. You did, and it just opened my aperture in many different ways. So I appreciate it. So starting off, want to get to know a little bit about Deeg. You said, in our intro there, you're a New England boy,
Yeah.
currently in Seattle. You made your way
True.
over to Europe. What's the story?
The story? Oh boy. The story is let me try to think of a way to summarize it. So child Wunderkind, who's amazing at school, suddenly starts failing out of everything his senior year of high school. Crashes and burns hard. Struggles through college, fails out, lands at his parents' house, desperate for any identity. learns to love video games because there the things he's good at matters. There he's appreciated. There he can find relevance and connection, and no one's trying to tell him to get a job or to figure his life out. And learned some things along the way. Stumbled a lot. Eventually met the girl who would become my wife, and learned a lot through that connection and that relationship. Gave games a big breather for 4 or 5 years, around the time she and I were first getting to know each other. And then had the wonderful experience of getting to introduce her to her very first video game. She grew up without him, basically. Kind of
Which one
thought
was
they
it?
were kind of bad, maybe a little evil. Guild Wars 2.
Right on.
Yeah. So I was actually applying for jobs, and they're local, the Seattle area, the company that makes it ArenaNet. And I applied, and I was like, let's have a look at what they're working on, because I hadn't seen an ArenaNet product since Guild Wars 1, which I played back in college. I played as I was failing out of college back in the day. You see, I never understood what it was that was fucking me up back in those days, because I was a straight A student up until I was failing. I never understood why. No one really seemed to understand why. But I introduced her to gaming, and gaming became a bigger part of my life after that. And years later, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And when I started learning about ADHD, I finally started unlocking some of the things that never made sense about myself. And the podcast has been a big old excuse to uh, verbalize those learnings, connect it with the various things I see in gaming, and be a chance to heal in a communal way, not just off in my corner of the world doing my thing. So it's been really it's been a real blessing to have people interested in hearing what I have to say and wanting to tell me what they think. That's my favorite part, is people sharing their stories. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I remember you speaking about your ADHD in a previous chat. I can't recall which one it was, in one of the basement sides, I think. And
Okay.
I believe what I remember you saying was how ADHD gaming became that And one phrase I think you mentioned was an outlet, but then you kind of likened it to almost like a drug, almost like a release, and that shrouded what was really happening for quite a long time until you were able to uncover that link there.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're feeling shitty and you find a button somewhere, and when you press the button, you stop feeling shitty for a little while. You're gonna keep pressing that button for a long time, even when it stops working, hoping that it's gonna make you not feel shitty for a little while. And that's what it was. Gaming really worked for me for a while, especially when I was transitioning from high school into college. It seemed like it was pretty cool at the time and pretty weird to be a gamer, by the way. Back in the early 2000s, not a lot of people even had broadband internet back in those days, and I was organizing league matches and shit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like
Team Fortress, right?
yeah, Team Fortress Classic was the game I played. Really cool, unique game and a really fun community. But after that ended, which it did, rather than like do the human thing, which is try to take the learnings and move on, I just kept trying to recreate it. I went into World of Warcraft and I went into a bunch of other games and just it's not so easy to figure out what you're about. It's not so easy to figure out why things go wrong. And
And
I'm
even, and
grateful to
even when you
video
get
games
there,
because what's that?
so then even when you get there, I mean, at least for me, I'm not even sure I got it right.
Damn straight. Damn straight. That's one of the core realizations is to accept the answer that you can find, but also accept that it's not complete.
Yeah.
And
So
that's the
so
way I
nowadays,
treat my. Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's why I treat the podcast too. I don't try to make any of them perfect, but I
Yeah.
always try to figure out like, okay, what are the things I want to work on, improve, directions I want to go, things I want to explore. Just let it be an imperfect creation that changes over time.
Yeah, I know I definitely have that issue of wanting it to be more perfect than not. And sometimes I'm
Yeah,
just spinning my wheels trying to figure it out, like what we were trying to figure out here before, and all these little hiccups that didn't pop up until right before, of course.
what technical problems? I don't know what you're talking about, Lanzer.
Yeah.
You're just
so,
joking,
so,
right?
so nowadays, you remind me what it is that you do in your professional life.
I'm a solutions architect, which means that I help. I work at a software startup. I help implement client customers using the software, B2B, so
That's
businesses.
right. And didn't you change jobs from what you previously were not too long ago?
Yeah, I was doing this kind of work before, but it was for another company. I'd been there for about 4 years, and I found a new company to try out at the end of last year. So I started a new job. I've been doing that for a few months.
And a solutions architect, they present the product to the customer and liaise with the problems, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
so the idea behind the job is you have a software product that you're trying to you're marketing to big companies who are trying to get things done, right? And it's not my job to build the product. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a software engineer. I have technical skills. I can do some engineer stuff. It's not my job to sell the product, and it's not my job to manage the customer relationship. But all
Oh,
those things are my job. So
okay, I got it.
it's kind of a glue type role where the idea is once the sales process is completed, you need to have someone who's the point person on taking responsibility for the customer journey and making sure that they get what they need. And that if there's a problem with the product, then it's my job to hunt down our engineers. If there's a problem with the sales process and an expectation that was set, it's my job to liaise with the sales team. If there's a customer relationship issue, it becomes my job to liaise. It's a very collaborative kind of role, talking to a lot of people. Easy to imagine that I would want to do that, right?
I mean, gee, who knew? So I imagine
Right,
then
right.
it sounds like the more you describe it, that there is at least a notable amount of overlap between your day-to-day job and how you apply that here
Yeah,
in all 64 plus of your interviews.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't always that way. It took some iteration to figure that out and some luck because I started my career in corporate tech a little 9 years ago, doing customer support. Just a simple entry level customer
Mm-hmm.
support job, and I eventually I kind of up leveled a little bit internally by just figuring out some database stuff, and I started moving more into data, and I dabbled with maybe getting into data engineering. It seemed pretty exciting, very useful job. A lot of people want people to do that job. And I started with working at a startup in 2015 with a complete back of the house role, which I thought was what I wanted. I never talked to the customer. In fact, I barely even talked to the customer teams. Just completely chilling with a bunch of other engineers and we're doing data work. And it took me a while to figure out that I hated it. And I wasn't any good at it. I felt miserable, and I realized that when I moved from that job to my next job, which ended up being 100% customer facing, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to be in a customer facing kind of role, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that. ADHD, I think, plays some part in that, um, but it seems to be where I'm most effective, and you know, you fail, you move on, and try to learn the lesson, and
Fail forward, baby.
that
Fail
was
forward.
That's one of my big lessons is to try to keep whatever I'm doing focused on the people.
Right on. So is that one of the things that does that relate to what drives you? Is what you're just speaking to?
I think so. I mean, what drives me? I think it's sort of like this reciprocal process, right? So like I'll learn something about a person like you or someone who I'm interviewing. And by learning about the privilege of learning something really true about somebody is you can project that truth back on yourself and see if it fits and see if it illuminates something about yourself that maybe
Yeah.
I wasn't clearly seeing before. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it illuminates by contrast. When you learn you're in some ways maybe opposite or complementary to what you're learning about this person. And so the process and then the realization about myself will then help me see the world in a different way. And then seeing the world in a different way helps me find people to connect with and who I then it's this reciprocating process, I think.
No,
Learn about the
I totally
world,
get that.
learn about
Yeah.
yourself. That's that's what I find that's what keeps me doing the podcast. Um,
It seems like there's
it's
a very large inquisitive curiosity / educational element that underpins a lot of what you're after here.
yeah, well, it's hard for me to speak to that because it's a quality I've always had. I never had to conjure that quality about myself. It just seems to be part of my personality. I'm interested. I want to know more. I want to learn more. I want to understand better. And I think that one of the big things that gaming used to do for me, especially, is give me something to understand really well. Kind of a pocket universe to understand and feel really good about when the bigger universe, the game of the real world, which contains the game that I'm playing, when it seems too hard, too difficult to understand to make my way in. I know how to make my. It's funny. I'm actually I'm really good at navigating in a video game, like really good. Um, at least I think I'm good. I know game worlds are designed to be navigated, so
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But I'm useless when it comes to navigation in the real world. I turn around and I'm lost. I, it's just
Google Maps really
uh,
saved you, huh?
I'm reliant on stuff like that. Maybe if I'd stopped using them so much, I would be less reliant. I mean, I would learn, but
Man, what did we used
um,
to do before that? MapQuest, right? It was MapQuest.
bro, printing out MapQuest. I don't. I mean, the thing is, that's better than pulling out a folded map. Um, so I mean, it just depends where you are in the continuum, I guess. But I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that kind of tech. It's a totally different world than the one I grew up in.
Yeah, we both. Yeah, I still remember an encyclopedia when I was in elementary school, and the big, huge Hewlett Packard, the dial-up. Oh, it was a different world, folks. It was a different world. Managing a
Yeah,
clan,
man.
like Deeg said, was very difficult to do, A dial-up internet with StarCraft on Battle.net.
Bro, the whole gaming world before Discord and Twitch, it was such a pain in the ass to connect with people.
It was very disjointed. Like you had the
Yeah.
forums, then you had the online game, and then what? Ventrilo, Mumble came, different stuff like that. What else did we do? I think, did we use Skype? Did you ever use Skype? Like Skype groups?
Not for gaming. Nah.
Yeah.
Skype was always like a normie kind of thing. Gamers didn't use Skype. At least the gamers
I
I
don't
knew
remember
did.
using Skype.
I
too
remember the earliest days. I remember ICQ, but it wasn't voice chat. It was just messaging. IRC, of course. I don't know if you mentioned that for chat. For voice, it was Roger Wilco, TeamSpeak, Ventrilo. Roger Wilco was such crap. Looking back at it, the voice quality was so bad. I don't know if people used it.
I don't remember. I think we just used MIRC and Ventrilo.
Yeah.
I think that's all it's kind of hard to
So,
remember.
like,
what those
are we
days
like
were
close to the
sometimes.
same age? I'm 38.
I'm 32.
Okay, so close-ish.
So you have a few years on me.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that sometimes gives me a slightly different perspective on like technology and gaming is that experience of trying to game online before the internet was ready for gaming in a big way. There's a huge amount of my gaming past that is completely lost to history because it was before the age of the internet where everything was documented and everything was shared and recorded and data harvestable.
Yeah, I understand that. Me being a few years younger than you means that when I got into the scene, it was just when things were documenting, like when Gmail was in beta and you had to give out invitations, and that was the only way you could get Gmail. And so things were just starting to get documented, but none of us knew what that meant. So I look back on, what happened 20 years ago. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is definitely like late 90s and early 2000s. Oi. Cringe.
Now, the cool thing about it, though, is that being a gamer in those days was kind of different. Like, it felt like it made you more different than the average person.
Yeah.
Whereas being a gamer now kind of feels less special in a way. It's more something that everyone does. It's like being a gamer is like saying, yeah, I watch TV. It's like, okay, so what?
Right. Yeah. Oh, what, you play Candy Crush now? No. I play
That's true.
PlanetSide.
It's true. The world of mobile games, man. Yeah.
So it's safe to say that your gaming experience, the professional world in which you spend most of your day has impacted what you're after now, and even just the sharing of your world to others. And when Deeg Podcast, like I said, 64, even when you were Basement Side, interviewed Rel, Kamikaze, developers from Guild Wars. I even watched a couple of those, even though I'm a Guild 1 and I haven't touched it since the like Assassin's expansion or something like that, like many years ago.
Factions.
But when I've yet to see what I would call a common thread, except you made a tell once, and it was who were you talking to? You're talking about chefs. And how you like the idea of talking to another chef in the kitchen. And I can see now where that thread kind of connects to what you were just saying, how you learn about the world and learn about yourself.
Yeah.
Had it, and then it went...
I can't remember that anecdote. I can't. But it sounds like something that I would say.
It was. You were talking to... Who was it? Hold on, I got this. Chef. Nothing. Okay. Anyways.
Oh, good.
It was... you were talking about... what really got you motivated, not just player interactions, but seeing how those player interactions manifested themselves in like social environments. And tying it back to what I was just saying, do you have a specific approach or direction that you want each of your interviews to go, or do you more of the sit back, relax, and let the flow take over?
It's both, I would say. It's both. I usually have an angle, like something that I think could be interesting to explore, and a direction that I think it could go. Um, and I'll because what like part of it's v- so we've been talking a lot about the very personal aspects of the podcast, what it does for me, and that's all very true. All that's very true, and I'm always quite selfish, in fact, in pursuing the topics that I think are important for me to learn about. But there's also an aspect to it of trying to serve the communities who get interested in my content, and that starts with the game. So if it's PlanetSide, the PlanetSide scene; if it's Guild Wars, the Guild Wars scene, um, and trying to surface the things that I think that the community could find useful. And actually, you probably seen that angle come out more strongly than usual in some of the PlanetSide interviews I've done recently, where I've talked to Kamikaze78 about authority is the word he used to describe it, and what the quality of what quality it is that comes out when people are effectively embodying the thing they're talking about versus when they don't. Also talking to Sirius about his beef with Shakhtar and what that means, and for the two of those guys, and also for their two communities, and talking to Rel more recently about what I see is sort of the clash between the big planet side and the little planet side players.
Yeah,
I think
those
those
are
are
all really interesting to watch.
thank you. I think those are all really difficult, very very difficult problems to contend with as individuals and as communities. So I try to talk to the community leaders, and maybe that's like where the chef metaphor comes in.
It was with
Um,
Kamikaze. You were talking
I believe
about
that.
how you felt like the interviews that you do feels like you tend to get in touch with chefs in many ways.
Yeah, yeah. So like, there's a difference between like I'm friends with a lot of people, and the question of who to have on as a guest is always a difficult one to answer. And there's a ground truth that I just end up going with my gut most of the time in terms of what I think will be a good conversation that needs to happen on my channel. Sometimes there'll be a message that needs to get out, but it's not really important that I be the one to get it out, right? Um, or maybe I'm not the best one to channel it, and I let those things do what they need to do. Right now, in the Guild Wars scene, as a good example, there's this big kerfuffle in the community about a new feature um, called Dragon's End, which is a a set piece battle in the Guild Wars community, um, in the new Guild Wars expansion that is delivered in a way that has been traditionally serving the more casual player base, who just kind of logs in, they put in their time, and they kind of get their rewards. And whether they're very good or not doesn't matter very much. But this particular event is tuned to 11, which means that the casual players who usually show up for these kinds of big open world events usually fail. And actually, the players who are doing really well are the raiders, are the organized group dungeon guys who already know how to get the most out of their builds, and they spent time like mastering the combat. And there's this debate going on within the community about whether this is a good change in terms of the way this content is presented, or it's a bad change. And I've thought about weighing in on it. I've thought about talking about it, but I don't know if I need to. Um, that's what it comes down to for me. Is oftentimes it's a question of time, because it takes me like 20 hours or so probably to do a podcast, in terms of from the time I start researching a guest to the time that I button up all the social media stuff at the end of producing it. Uh, and I have my day job, so
It
it's a
definitely feels like
big
that sometimes. Yeah.
investment of effort. I'm sure you know that. I'm sure you know that very well, and a lot of creators out there do. None of the people who make PlanetSide content, I think, can do it as a day job. That's kind of a pipe dream for PlanetSide creators right now. Maybe that'll change. I hope it changes. And I wish success to everyone who's taken a bite of the apple. And I think I've rambled off the point a little bit here. I apologize for that.
No, it's okay.
Um,
Because that kind of connects to that connects a lot to what you were saying
okay.
once when you were speaking to Rail. Not this time, but 2 years ago, back
Okay.
when you were still doing Basement Side. You said
Mhm.
you said that you were really tired of not getting out of what you're putting into games,
Yeah.
and you thought, well, why don't I make a podcast? But the connection point here is what you said next was you were really into making connections that might not happen otherwise, and
Mm.
that seems to
Yeah.
strike a very consistent
Yeah.
tune with not just having discussion with Kamikaze or having talks with Shocktor and Sirius, and then allowing that conversation to happen if it wants to, but also the things you don't
Mhm.
engage in, like the Guild Wars 2 kerfluffle
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, that's I think you said it well. Um, uh, and what I said back then is absolutely true. To try to do the things that I think I am called to do in some way. And there's so much that goes unsaid that trying to be a better version of what someone else is already doing doesn't seem like a super good use of my time for the most
Yeah.
part. Um, I think that's kind of it. And there's a danger to that, which is I don't get to as easily copy what's working for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's a danger, and I've not grown as fast as I would have liked to. I'll be totally honest. But the upside to it is I get to make sure that the content that I do has a maximum relevance to me. And the thing that's come along the furthest I started the podcast isn't necessarily my subscriber count; it's me as a person. And the kind of conceit is that by developing myself as a person, the product that I make will get better and better over time. I think that's true. I'm still going with that hypothesis, but time will tell.
Yeah, I remember you. It was an offhand comment, almost seemed quite a long time ago, I think. But you had said that in some ways this podcast was selfish. It was about you
Yeah,
talking out loud what you would say otherwise. But now it's just the benefit of technology, and then the
totally.
reciprocal nature that ends up, like you were saying, what drives you is really a big bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, uh, like what do you want to be when you grow up? Some people maybe they know. I think most people have no idea. How do you know how your unique essence can manifest? Uh, It's fucking hard to figure that out. Um, and every part of what I do on the podcast is just adding up things I have stumbled into that I recognized as having worked. Recognizing that it's important to coalesce my interests into a person, into
Mm.
people. So communities, other people I talk
There's
to.
that player interaction thing again.
Yes. Because that's I don't I'm still trying to understand actually what it is about that works for me. Um, I don't know if I know the right answer, but I can just say that it does. When I make myself accountable to my guests and the communities that I connect with, I just the things that I do are way more connected up and true, and they actually happen. As opposed to what I was doing before the podcast, which is I think the quality I was starting to talk about when that and I used to use this terminology a lot, which was not being satisfied by what I was getting out of gaming. That's true, I wasn't. I was recognizing that I was trying to get something, and I was pressing the same button that used to give me
Mm-hmm.
something that I needed, and it wasn't giving it to me anymore. I was just trying to find another button to press.
Yeah.
And so the idea of doing something creative. Also, this whole idea of doing a podcast is something that I couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years ago when I was struggling. In a sense, I'm a little annoyed about that. Like, I wish this kind of technology could have existed back then when I was struggling. Maybe I could have crawled out of some holes earlier in my life. But on the other hand, everything about that experience made me who I am today. And I like that. I like who I am. Um, and I'm
Right
always trying to
on.
work on getting better. So I don't want to resent that too hard.
Right on, Deegsta. Right on. I do have a theory about that, which
Oh boy,
it's still stewing in my brain, but it didn't really click
let's
into
get it.
place until I saw your interview with Sirius. And
Okay.
and I can only say this, my theory, because I share a lot of the same. We overlap in many areas. It sounds like.
Okay.
I would call my, in line with StratSide. I'm much more of the entrepreneurial business side of things. I really like connecting
Yeah.
things and people together. But when
It
I
has a
saw
very
your,
practical kind of like nuts and boltsy
yeah, yeah,
kind of
I'd
vibe
say
to it.
so.
I like that. It's like here's how to get the results. That's how it's businessy.
And no doubt my military career has predisposed me towards that, or I guess you would say really refined it toward that's even second nature now, and I'm
Mhm.
dialing it back slowly as the longer I'm a civilian. But
Oh,
in any
really?
case,
Huh.
yeah, yeah. But in any
Huh.
case, when I saw your interview with Sirius, and the it wasn't even the topics that you went into; it was the allocation, the space you gave the elephant in the room, and that's when I really started. It wasn't even conscious. It's like, okay, all right, it makes sense. It's consistent, and what you were saying with the player interactions and how that reciprocal process, and what I think the thing that's happening is when you put the podcast out there, when you say the words, when you explore the connections, you it's creating, I would call it reality. It's cementing, crystallizing into the world what it is that's going on in your brain. And there seems to be something really motivating to you about that. And
Yeah.
when you turn that, that's really cool to think about, into here is here it is in the ether,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
now I can compare, I can contrast, I can build, I can tear
Yeah,
down if you
brother.
need to.
Yeah, brother.
There's You seem to really thrive in that area, and
Yeah. Yeah,
there's
dude,
it
you're hitting the nail on the head, man. Go for it.
nah, that's my theory. That's what I think's
Yeah,
happening.
no, no, you're right. You're right. Like it's two things I can say about that in response. Number one is at the start of last year, uh, I started doing solo content, and actually, a string of them right at the start was all about PlanetSide and the Outfit Wars drama that was going on. I saw a lot of people in the PlanetSide scene found me at the time, and but I was doing a piece of content every single week. And the reason I was doing a piece of content every single week is exactly what you're describing. Is because on the weeks I didn't do content, I oftentimes didn't work on myself. I oftentimes didn't try to understand what was going on. I didn't dig deeper. Um, the act of creation and that accountability of showing up every single week in front of people gave me the kind of excuse. It was the cap over the wall to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to come along. I'm going to work on things that interest me and that bother me. Um, and the other thing I could say about that is externalization of structure is like the most important thing you can do if you have ADHD.
Hmm.
Lists, schedules, and in my case, podcasts. I'm literally externalizing my personal thinking and development process. And I just I happen to hope that the skills I have um, in conversation are. Let me say that differently. I happen to have done the work to develop the conversational skill so that I can bring that piece in and not just show up every week and talk about myself, but also have have guests on and help them surface their truth too. Those are my favorite moments, man. It's not even when I come across something like if I say something really well in a podcast, like I'm proud of that. That's great. Like I can look back at that and say, you know what, I said that really well, and that'll help me remember it. Or I can look back at it and think, oh, I've come along since then. I think something a little different now. But the best moments for me is when I feel like I can hear a truth from someone that um, that is hard to come out under any circumstances. That's why I've really canvassed the PlanetSide community and try to find opinions that disagree with each other at times. So I've interviewed Shockter and Lex and Aflick, and that's
I
why I've
imagine that's
interviewed
really hard to do in the
Rel and
PlanetSide community.
the PlanetSide scene. Well, it has the same disease all old gaming communities have. It's just there's not enough churn of new faces, and I've heard someone say this elsewhere recently, but these old gaming communities, somewhere along the way, you lose whatever the necessary incentive is to be kind to each other. Um, I don't know how that happens, really, but I think at some point people sort of realize that it doesn't matter if you kind of are a dick. It doesn't matter if you do bad things. Things don't really change. Maybe it's a comment on the kind of agency that a gamer has in the gamer and video game kind of social contract. Um, but it sucks. It sucks. That's actually one of the main things that's always driven me is seeing strife in these communities that I think doesn't need to happen, or that represents some kind of an opportunity for catharsis or connection.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember you saying not long ago that it makes you feel really bad to see people you consider friends going at each other.
sucks.
Yeah.
Sucks.
I
So
really
I said that
found
on
myself
the
resonating with that when you said that.
yeah. I think I said that to Kamikaze when I was talking about
You did. I wasn't going to bring up
the
names, but yeah,
serious podcast. No, it's okay. I mean, if it's okay with you.
I'm fine.
And yeah, that's referencing the beef between Shockter and Sirius, both people who I had the pleasure of interviewing, Sirius multiple times, and both people who I consider friends, who I feel like I got to know their truth. And it sucks to see not only two people I consider friends, but two chefs, right? Two leaders of these communities, people whose example is followed, people whose opinions and words have ripple effects. I think it sucks to see that kind of a schism, and
Yep.
it's just very very hard to operate in the same space and communicate and be congenial, and people have hurt feelings, and people deal with hurt feelings in different ways at different time scales. Um, it bothers me, man. It bothers me. I
Yeah.
think what that comes back to is an inalterable aspect of my nature, is I'm highly agreeable. Um, I'm actually super duper conflict averse. It's really really difficult for me to willingly confront someone about anything. Um, and but the way that I'm getting better at manifesting that desire is to seek resolution rather than to avoid conflict. Um, so yeah,
See, that makes a lot of sense. And where you and I diverge is I am very conflict oriented.
it's good to know your strengths, man. You got to play the hand you're dealt.
Yeah, but
How do you think that
that's
comes out? That conflict seeking nature.
I can come off as intense, and not as
Yeah,
in like a aggressive, violent sort of way. The military has taught me how to properly channel that in a productive way, and also
sure.
call it a legal way. You know, make sure you
Always good.
yeah. But I'd say even I'll just because it's so recent
Mhm.
the kerfuffle I had, I call it a misunderstanding with Shock Tour, and it was
Oh sure.
it basically surrounded the intensity I have in trying to connect. It
Mm.
can really rub people the wrong way, and in Shockter's case, it rubbed him the wrong way. So that's wasn't me being in conflict with him, but the desire to engage definitely. I don't know. I just probably could have read the room a little bit better. And
Sure.
yeah. So it comes out in terms of engagement now, and it's in many ways, I have this very same. I find myself really, what's the word? I find myself in the same corner as you do when you describe player interactions, not
Okay.
feeling really negative and bad seeing your friends going at each other. In my case, us building the community, and when I see the opposite of that, it makes me
Yeah.
sad to see, and I
When it
want to.
fragments. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we overlap in many areas, and my conflict-oriented nature tends to want to engage in the form of a connection, and
Mhm.
conflict might be too rough of a word because I'm not looking to like hurt and that sort of thing.
Sure, sure. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, because I mean, if I remember right, um, that conflict you had with Shockter was he was streaming, he was talking about something, and you were in his chat, just giving kind of your perspective on something. He just kind of I don't know, he wasn't into it, and ended up banning you, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I've been in a situation before where I'll see something happening that I'm not really that cool with, for one reason or another. I don't really like it. And, I think Reddit is a place where this happens a lot, not
Mm-hmm.
for you or me necessarily, but in general, where, people who maybe don't have a voice of, a creator's size voice can find some voice and express it, um, say what they think. And, yeah, for me, the podcast was a blessing because it gave me somewhere other than Reddit to get stuff out. But the point I was originally gonna make, not to meander too far, was that I don't I don't know, I would not necessarily disagree in chat because for me, that feels a little too scary to be disagreeable there. So my way of dealing with that is to try to, um, if I'm going to try to disagree with someone, you either do it in private or, like, where there's not a lot of people that are gonna, give me negative feedback, again, being conflict averse. Or try to do it in a very controlled setting like a podcast where there's plenty
Yeah.
of time to get to know each other. There's plenty of time to discuss it and talk it out. Um, I'm not saying my way is better. Hell, and there are people who I disagree with who I will never be able to see on a podcast, probably. So I'll probably never have any kind of catharsis there. Um, and there's a risk there too. There is a
Yeah.
risk of being too conflict avoidant as well as being too conflict seeking, I
Right.
suppose.
I've had to dial that back over the years, and again, military training, all sorts of life events have helped me to learn very hard lessons about how people react. So I've had to, find a middle
Can I ask
ground,
you about your
as most
military
people.
experience? I'm
What's that?
curious about it. Can I ask you about your military experience, just at a high
Sure.
level?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that like? What did you do? How many years?
So Lex and I were talking about this in your chat the other day, and
Yeah, it was all flying way over my head.
it's
I
okay.
remember
It's
it. It
okay.
was
If
beautiful.
you're not in it, Lex and I, even though we had different career fields, I understood what he was saying. I think he understood what I was
Yeah.
saying too. I won't speak for him, but that was my feeling. And yeah, I served in the military, active duty for 8 years, deployed
Okay.
overseas, combat zones, that sort of thing, and
Holy crap.
yeah, and right now I am a civilian for the last couple years, and married someone who is active duty. She's a wonderful wife, and
Okay.
that's why we're
Military
moving.
family.
Right. But
Yeah.
yeah, I commissioned straight out of college after doing officer training for 4 years. And
Uh-huh.
then that 4 years is kind of like your academic book knowledge. It tells you the rules of the road. You memorize all
Mhm.
sorts of stuff. And when you commission, then you become an officer. And in my case, I was a second lieutenant, a butter bar. And
Hmm.
you get put into a unit where you are instantly one of the usually, at least in the Air Force, I'm an Air Force officer, one of the top 3 highest ranking, and you just got into the military, and you're put in charge of people who've been in the military, some of them almost 20 years. They have kids as old as you. And it's a very humbling experience to go from being
I can imagine.
that arrogant, really know where you are when you're a cadet. Now you're at the bottom of the totem pole and you don't even know it. So
Mm.
that's where a lot of humbling experiences. Luckily, my career field, I was a contract negotiator. So when the
Hmm.
government needed to buy something like a pencil or an airplane, I was the career field that negotiated with the business community to contract and acquire those things.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
So my career field had a deployable career field. So we would need to buy things over in the Middle East because we didn't
Hmm.
just want to take stuff. So they would send my career field over to take what the user or my customer, which maybe the communication squadron needs a new radio. So
Mhm.
instead of, in order to support the local economy, wins hearts and minds, it's all connected. And
Huh.
that the strategy there would be to send the career field that is the most business oriented to go find that in the local community.
Okay.
That was why I was over there. So that necessarily put me in many different
Contact.
situations
Yeah. I'll bet.
where I wouldn't speak the language, or I would only speak a little word, shway shway, a little Arabic. And
Huh.
yeah, I spent almost 2 years in the Middle East regions. So
Got it.
it was so much fun.
What did you take away from that experience? If you don't mind my asking.
People are people no matter where you go. Good, bad, different religion, same religion. I mean, they have wants, desires, needs. What you would read in a book, just remember there are people behind it who mess up, who have weird days. They're funny. Some of them are really serious and take it too far, and that's what you see on the news. But then there's a lot of regular people. They're just people. They want a good life. They want to feel meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
They want families. They have families, and they'll protect those families.
Yeah.
It's so similar, even though there are many differences in culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that was so eye-opening to me that I think it really helped put my aggression, my conflict nature in check. And it was through a very, I would call it, productive way. It wasn't even like I had an incident. It was just the witnessing of someone else's viewpoint that I'm not going to hurt them. I'm not there to do that. There are many rules surrounding that.
No doubt.
I wouldn't want to, really. I'm a guest in their country, and just learning how to coexist, even when you're at cross purposes in a non-violent way. It's even as something simple as, I want this for this price. You don't want to give it to me for this price, and the cultural elements that play into how that unfolds.
No doubt.
It was phenomenal.
Sounds like you learned something about yourself by talking to other people. I can relate to that.
Every day, I'm learning something about myself even talking to you. I think that reciprocal nature, we share that in many ways. So I was having the time of my life, an environment I had no idea.
That's the best way to learn, man, is put yourself into a situation where you don't know a damn thing.
Yep.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. Thank you for sharing that experience, and thanks for your service. I always feel kind of silly saying. I think we had a conversation about that the other day.
Yeah.
But
Thanks for your support.
It ain't no easy thing. Any part of that, doing any part of that. And I gripe about my customers and I gripe about technology, but it's a different level of thing. Like what people like you do going over there. Thanks.
Yeah, we gripe about our customers too. It's all, we're people. And Lex,
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
watching,
yeah.
thank you for your service too, my man.
Damn straight.
That's cool. I really
I
enjoyed
think
hearing that about you.
Thank you. And I enjoy hearing that about you. I think that quality, like it's not like a Deeg thing or a Lanzer thing. I actually think it's an everyone thing. Like to kind of, I think that's kind of what you were saying. People are people. It says everyone has to exist in the world, and everyone has to be themselves, and that requires learning about yourself and learning about the world. And one of the big challenges to me all the time is to open more of myself to the world. I might seem like a pretty open-minded kind of dude, like a kind of open creative soul when I talk on the podcast. If I'm sitting in my apartment in the same damn chair at the same damn desk every single day doing this, like, the adventure is very derived. And, like, I'm in the middle of trying to figure out a move to a new apartment, which I hate. I hate moving, and it always just scares me. And I'm not even moving that far. I'm, like, just moving a few miles away. But the idea of having to figure out how to live my life somewhere else, the podcast for me was something that I knew would be in the right direction and something that I could tolerate doing. And that's, like, a key thing. If you're not in a situation where you're thrown into the fire and you gotta figure it out, if you're trying to, like, struggle out of a comfortable situation, um, I think we get these ideas about, especially us men, I think. There's the fantasy of kind of being thrust into the situation where the dragon needs to be slain, and the personal fantasy you
You've
have about,
spoken a
"I
lot
would
about
slay
that.
the dragon." Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and maybe you would, maybe you won't. It's hard to know if you're in that situation, but most of us living in the first world are probably never gonna find ourselves in that situation, and we gotta find our own dragons,
Yeah.
um, or at least recognize the dragons that are in our daily life and fight them. It could be something as simple as just stopping fighting with your partner about taking out the trash and just do it yourself. Take on the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Doing the dishes. Small ass things that can make your life and make you useful to the people around you. It's
Yeah.
I lived so long, man, just feeling so resentful of the responsibilities of the world. I'm a big guy. You can see that. It's been a problem my whole life, and that's a big part of it. Like, feeling like just kind of resentful of the fact that I had to have a body. Feeling like uh, I was a victim of life, not a solution to it. And I think a lot of gamers have are in or have been in that kind of same spot, man. Um, Games are these alternate realities that give
Mm-hmm.
us ways to exist, to cut the suffering of our lives by substituting some qualities of another life. And it's such an
Wow.
incredibly potent
Yeah.
thing. And I think that the meme that people lean back on is how game use can go so wrong, because it's so obvious when it goes wrong. It's so obvious when, you see someone playing World of Warcraft for 12 hours a day and failing out of college, that gaming is not helping that person. Uh, but it's not obvious when it goes right, and that's the thing, is I think it can go right. And I think that for me, the podcast, and maybe for you, StratSide too, is like an example of trying to change myself and the small parts of the world that surround me in a better way. And
Yeah.
who knows if it'll always need to be what it is today. Probably it won't, but I
That's
don't really
definitely.
but I don't really accept the self-critical, self-destructive story of, we're all fucked, so might as well indulge ourselves. I think that's a route to hell, man. It's a hell that I occupied for a long time, and it never, no matter how much I wrap myself up in cynicism and sarcasm and resentment, no matter how much I did that, it never created a path to meaning. It never created a solution to the question of, why should I live? Only thing that did that was taking responsibility for the shitty things around me, from small to the big. Anyway, that was a long ass. Apparently, you
That's
inspired
deep.
me.
And did you find that when you started doing that, or even now as you're doing that, do you th- do you think that's helping? Do you see
Hell yeah,
an uptick?
hell yeah, dude. I think it helps a lot. I think it's given me literally a reason to live. But the thing is, I didn't eh, like, there are a few kind of rock bottom moments in my life I can kind of sort of identify. Um, and it's not when I was when you get to those moments in your life, it's not immediately clear how to get out or where it's going to go. it's an act of desperation to try something different, perhaps. And that's what the podcast sort of was. It was a sort of rock bottom in the world occupied with gaming. But yeah, it does help. I did a podcast at the start of this year called "The Day I Quit New World." It was sort of an experiment in terms of style, and it was all about a moment at the end of last year where I had a sudden realization about the way that I was using certain kinds of video games and why it wasn't working. And it wasn't I hadn't figured out what I was trying to get exactly. I didn't exactly understand why I was pressing that button, what need that button press could have satisfied. But I knew that that button was not working anymore, and I needed to stop pressing it with the idea that I would get that kind of thing out of it. Um, and the thing is, realizing that in that part of my life enables me to see other parts of my life that way. That sort of skill, that sort of internal competence, that sort of model of operating, you can't ever unknow something about yourself, I don't think. Not really. Once you realize something, that sticks with you. And maybe you can deny it, or maybe you can suppress it, but it's still there. They say that where did I hear this? It's something along the lines of that the true mistake is not made. This isn't clear enough in my head to verbalize. I'm sorry, but basically, it's pointing out that when we act in a way that we know is not in line with something about ourselves, that's a thing to avoid. That's a thing to mitigate. And I realized that I was using video games in a way that was not working. And even though I didn't know what was next, I at least started to stop doing that one thing. And now I feel like I'm being so vague and referential that none of this even makes sense.
No,
I can give
that's okay.
I can anchor it in the specifics, but I don't know, the specifics aren't really that special.
Sometimes it's just about hitting. You don't always have to hit the bullseye. It's just you get a little bit closer, and then one day you nail it. That's exactly what it is. Here's how to say it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think I have a much better handle on myself and on the world than I used to. And I don't think I could have gotten there if I hadn't turned on the camera.
If you hadn't turned on what?
The camera.
Oh.
Metaphorically, I mean.
If you hadn't cemented that stuff into reality.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And no amount of achievements in video games, no amount of headshots can ever really replace that for me. Every single podcast I do is worth like a month of 5 KD sessions, you know, in terms of how I feel about myself. It's a much better use of my time than trying to get very good at a video game, which is a path I've been down many, many times in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I definitely share that. I spent all last week working on the Combined Arms one, and it's been stewing in my mind for a little while. I knew I wanted to put it down on paper.
Yeah, man.
But I spent all last week, and it was so worth it. It was so worth it.
Dude, that's awesome. Is that the number 4? Is that the one?
Mm-hmm. Number 4. I think it's my best one. I feel it's my most valuable one so far. It goes to what you were speaking to, that there was something in it that helped me most of all. And I don't know what it is. It's a combination of this game. It's a combination of explaining or even just commenting, observing, pointing out making aware the different social connections that this game affords, the MMO aspect of it, and just the FPS that creates that visceral flow of game, or that gameplay flow. Somehow that connection, and then explaining how us Largefits, 500 players plus, approach something like that. I felt really good about it at the end. I felt that I had said what I wanted to say, even to myself. So
That's the first. That's the most important member of your audience, right there, man. Is speak to yourself.
I got a lot of great feedback. A lot of great feedback.
Yeah, that's so cool. People. I cruised by. I couldn't make enough time to sit down and watch the whole thing, but I cruised by and people were chatting. Man, like that's the good shit. Like that's a great feeling when you're speaking to yourself and others are also there too. That's the good shit right there.
So now that you're 64 in, 64 Deeg podcasts to include the basement sides. I think you went 20 something before you.
Yeah, that was a rebrand. It's all been the same thing the whole time. Rebrand. I just changed the branding.
So where do you see Deeg Podcast going? Same direction? Different direction? Unsure?
I think that there are some threads that I know that are on the table for me. I don't know exactly how to pick them up. So much of my content is community specific. Guild Wars and PlanetSide being the most obvious example. So one of the most obvious ways to grow my content is just to get really embedded with a different game community. But it's so hard to do that. It is such a huge investment of time and effort to really understand a game and to really get to know its community. And I don't know if I can fake it, dude. Don't know if I can fake it. I had a moment where I was like, I'm going to try to get into WoW retail because I wanted to understand what the game had become after not having touched it for 10 years. Last time I played was in Wrath of the Lich King at the time. I was like, what has this game become? Like, I've seen enough memes. Let's find out for myself. And it was cool to kind of get to know what the game had become and see the community. And I tried making some content about it, but it would have taken a lot more grinding in order to be able to start to connect with that community. And the truth was, my heart wasn't really in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's why I keep coming back to Guild Wars and PlanetSide. Is even though like they might not be the world's biggest communities or the most relevant in terms of the global mind share of video games, it's what's in my heart. And if I'm not authentic to that, if I don't speak to that most important member of my audience, then I think people know. I think people can easily tell when you're kind of faking it. When I see someone who I think is faking it, is trying to come off as an effect or not seeming to acknowledge some reality about themselves that I feel like I can see, but maybe they're trying to ignore. That's awkward. It makes you want to leave. Like you not want to watch. And that's why I'm really, really pleased to hear that you're going after this StratSide, talking about the combined arms, getting that thing out there that is so in your heart to get out there.
It is.
And putting it out there and saying, you know what? You mind if I swear? Is it okay if I swear?
Yeah.
You know what, motherfuckers? I did it. I did it. That's me. I made that. And I guess to live on forever, at least until YouTube goes away. Who knows if that'll ever happen. It's so satisfying to be able to print yourself out and onto the world in that way. And even if, no matter how many views you get, no matter how many likes you get, you did that. You can always point back to it. And that's where the 64 episodes comes from. It's just, no matter how many people see it, like, there's 64 great conversations, people. Well, I hope they're all great. The early ones maybe less so.
Well said, Deegster. Well said.
You too.
What were some? You said in the beginning when you first answered that there are threads out there, but you don't know how to pick them up.
Oh yeah, those other threads? Sorry. What are the threads?
Yeah.
So I'm not just interested in video games, but also in the process of and the art of personal transformation philosophy. But it's not. I'm not entirely sure how to explore that in podcast form. I've tried to apply some of what I've come to understand to gaming related topics. I think I've had some success with that. I think some of those have worked okay. But, there are people out there who have done interesting, amazing things that are not gaming related that I might want to talk to. Um, there's this one woman. She used video games to heal from like some kind of an injury she had, and she's gone on to write all these books, and she's even done a TED talk. I don't know if she'd want to come on my podcast, but like she's an example of someone who I think it'd be really cool to talk to and get to know. And she's not like a gamer, She's not like one of us in that sense. But she did touch that world, and I left a really important mark on her. And um, I just think that the fact that uh, there are so many interesting humans out there, I think I can connect with people who don't just play the games that I play. That maybe is a very broad way of putting it. And how do I start walking that path? Um, One of the things I really wanted to do last year, which I sort of had some success with, was to start to interview more game developers, not just streamers or other gamers. And I actually had a few people on. That well dried faster than I thought it would.
That's interesting.
And that was kind of a big lesson to me that uh, of the incentives people have when it comes to coming on podcasts and talking. And I mean, I'm not trying to be mysterious or anything, so I'll just be kind of clear about it. I was interviewing those Guild Wars 2 developers. You alluded to some of those. Awesome conversations, but that game went into a marketing cycle for their expansion, and they basically said, "No more interviews. We're not gonna free up our people to come on." And I'm still waiting to get the other side of that. Still waiting to hear back for them to want to go ahead and do more, and I don't know if it's ever going to happen. Um, and I went through a period of annoyance, and then being angry, and then being sad, and then accepting it because I saw this amazing path of
Yep.
just like having a different developer for that game on like a couple times a month, and then eventually
it's right there.
I would become
it's right there.
I would become the guy who interviews game developers, and other games would want to talk. Other game developers would want to talk to me. It was this whole like, progression, and then it just got cut right off. I was like, "Shit, what the hell do I do?" And I still don't really know the answer.
I used to be a host for a podcast called EPN, the Esports Professionals Network. It aimed to be an association of esports professionals across all branches, legal, the gamers, the business end, very, very professionally-ish, oriented.
Okay.
And we had a podcast, and I took over about halfway through it. And what I really settled on was bringing in all sorts of different people across the industry. And that's where I alluded to I've sometimes accidentally because I didn't put in as much research and I was still learning at the time. I accidentally interviewed one of the biggest photographers in esports, and I didn't even really know it until I brought on someone else who was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm sitting next to this guy." I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Oh fuck!
And then it just came, and I knew that I knew he had a lot of followers, but I didn't know that inside the esports world, when he showed up, it was like royalty.
Game time.
Almost.
He
was a big one.
Yeah.
He was a big fish, and that was so cool. At first, it was like the admiration of it because one of them was just starting out, the other one was very well established, and he was so humble that I had no idea of the depth of his influence and his experience. Even my
what a beautiful gift
research. But that connection was so cool. Anyways, I digress. The main point of what I was going after was when you just spoke to how the well run dry. I found myself in that situation, ironically enough, and the only way I was able to outpace that was I kept hopping different professions. So I hit photographers. Then I'm like, who else? Videographers? Is that a thing? So I looked into videographers. Then we had a videographer. Then I had a panel on not gender disparity, but it was I had PhDs on, and one of them was Carly. If you're watching, I still follow you on Twitter and look at the stuff that you post. It's really cool. But
How did you find these people and invite them? Like, what was the process for you? Yeah.
And also, the Esports Professional Network was a network of esport professionals. So I could just look in. One of the ones I found, the photographer who was just starting out was a part of that. And as I was looking, can't even remember how I found the big wig. But I just, up and tweeted him. It's like, hey, would you be willing to be on the show? He's like, yeah, totally. But the only way I could outpace that, because I had the same problem. I couldn't keep diving into the same profession. I kept hitting roadblocks. People who just had different things they were after, too many cancellations. So I went to different industries. I was going to hit the legal profession next, like Bryce, who started a esports law firm, which is still probably the number one, I think, in the world, in my eyes at least. Didn't quite get around to it before the association lost its momentum, and we stopped shortly thereafter. But yeah, when you said
what'd you do when?
Pardon?
Go ahead. No, continue.
When we got to the end, that was really, really a sad moment for me, because we were making connections that even on accident, and that was just cool. But I was constantly looking for the next profession. Who else can we make this connection with? Professions I didn't even know, like the PhD one. I have to look it up here in a second, but it was like gender participation, something along those lines, and how that how female participation was in the esports world, which at the time,
that's
what
an
turned me
interesting
on to
topic.
that was at the time there were a lot of articles after the wake of Gamergate. Was it Gamergate, I believe?
Oh yeah.
And some of the latest news articles were about the exploitation of women esport gamers, and how they weren't being paid things, and it just wasn't a good scenario for what the articles were painting. So I brought in different people who were very, very knowledgeable. I really enjoyed that one.
That's cool.
So I feel your pain. I felt your pain, and that was the only way I could stay ahead. Was I found a way to diversify, kind of very much in the way that you do.
Brian.
Yeah, and in your
It's
case,
not easy, dude.
Yeah, you're right.
As I'm sure you know, it's not easy to figure out where to go with it.
It's not.
And it's cool that you at the time had like this brand at your back. I'm just some asshole. Who the fuck am I?
You might have been able to say that with the first 10, 15 basement size, but by now, you've interviewed Rel twice. You've interviewed Kamikaze twice. Serious, Shocktor. Then you start to see.
My aim is higher, bro. I want to keep going. That's the thing.
That's awesome.
It's actually this. Yeah. There's a few people out there like
I'm looking forward to it.
In PlanetSide, in the world of PlanetSide, my fantasy is to interview Matt Higbee and Smed, not at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two people I would love to talk to. A lot of people, someone who a lot of people know is Luperza, Margaret Crone. She was the.
I think her title was with ServerSmash.
Manager? Yeah. But she's a community manager for Ashes of Creation now. So, I would love to talk to her, and I don't know, people who have had interesting. What's that?
Said pop on her stream. I did that not long ago when I was asking her about the community manager position, and she helped me understand some of the back end of what it was like for her. I knew RayRX because we worked together for years with PlanetsideBattles and ServerSmash.
Sure.
She had left the very beginning of ServerSmash, so I had some interaction with her. But yeah, I just popped in a stream while she was just starting up. I said, "Hey, Luperza, do you have a few minutes?" And she was very kind about it, and
that's cool.
Lent me her time.
And she and I have actually connected offline.
Okay, good.
But I think that and actually trying to pick a date and sit down and do it, it's
Right.
just hard. It's just hard.
Yeah.
Busy
We'll
people.
try when you try Matt. I've talked with Matt a number of times. Well, a number of times. I've talked with Matt
Maybe
offline.
after you and I get done, you can tell me how you connect with him.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
yeah.
have
That's no
I have no
problem.
idea how to get in touch with him.
We'll talk
I
after
don't
this.
even know if he'd be interested, but yeah, afterwards we talk offline about
I
that.
think so, Matt. Yeah, I
But
mean, you mentioned one time in a previous Deeg podcast the one between Kid Riot and Matt Hibby. That was
yeah.
while I was in HT and Kid Riot was in HT, Hostile Takeover at the same time.
Okay.
And Kid used to be a big personality in PlanetSide.
Yeah, I
That was
remember.
that was while I was writing news articles for PlanetSide. And I did a lot of my outfit player spotlights, one of which was Rel, over gaming articles. So I would do it via text, email, whatever, and then publish them on like MMOgames.com or Gamersphere, that sort of stuff. And yeah, and I think Luperza was one of them. I can't recall right now. But yeah, good times. The well runs deep.
It's a small world when it
It
gets
is.
right down to it sometimes.
It's a very small world, much smaller than
It's a
people
beautiful
realize.
thing. Yeah. And so like this all like came from a discussion about what threads are out there and how would I pick them up. So that's the way that the PlanetSide thread could run a little longer, right? That's one of the ways. But and there's a lot of value in that. But is that the most important thing for me to be
Yeah.
doing? Again, I mentioned you brought that. I love that moment you brought up because I forgot about that moment altogether of trying to have the conversations that might not happen otherwise. How many more planet-side centric conversations can I happen before I run out of those? How many more before I'm just repeating myself and I'm just a caricature of myself? Like, I think there's something I don't. That's something that I approach with great reluctance. And if anyone who's had the patience to sit through both of my interviews with Sirius, Kamikaze, and Rel, three big planet side dudes, I hope one thing is that you would notice is how my style has changed over time. And one of the things I really figured out and sitting down with those people again is the first talk can be a real getting to know you, which is super congenial, it's super focused on exactly what energy the guest wants to channel. But when you have someone back for the second time, it's not always obvious what you should talk about. And if you like I said, I watched a lot of other podcasts, and it's not so obvious to me it's happening because when the art is effective, it's kind of is invisible in a way. But and that's why I realized, okay, I gotta push Kamikaze on what does he mean when he says authority? Like, what does that mean? Like, I gotta push, and I find myself just needing to push back a little on things to be like, what's the thing that wouldn't come up elsewhere? What's the thing that I can actually um, connect with?
What's that new
That
connection that you can form?
yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, I know I've called it selfish, but maybe the selfish part of it is that I believe in some sense that the things that I think are not being said, and the things that I think are outstanding and outstanding in the sense that they're missing are things that are missing for other people. That's the selfish act, is to think that the things that are going on with me are also going on with other people. Um, and that's been the question of, is that true? I think that the answer seems to be that with some people, yeah, yeah. I think some people are having a lot of the same questions or feeling a lot of the same gaps that I feel. Um, but that's I don't know, man.
Sometimes it takes a PlanetSide shaman just to put it out there and help people make sense of it.
That was a very interesting comment that Sirius made. My understanding of the word shaman has changed a lot in recent
Yeah.
times, actually. I think of shaman, I think of the World of Warcraft class first, of
Sure,
course.
sure,
Wind
sure.
Fury Totem, very important. But the I learned that what a shaman actually does is sort of oh, I don't know if I can actually capture this, but
Depending on the culture, yeah.
Yeah, but like the kind of proto quality of the shaman is to help tap into a sense of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's all about. And you can do that with dance, you can do it with drums, you can do it with weird herbs, trippy things, you can do it with stories. There are lots of ways to tap into meaning, shared and otherwise. But that's what it's about. And I think that was a
A
really
conduit.
probably one of the highest compliments I've ever been paid for Sirius to have called me the
Wow.
PlanetSide shaman. Um,
Deegster.
because
All right.
that's what it's all about for me, man, is trying to figure out I'm infected by this idea that there's a reason that I'm here, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. And I just think it's a communal effort.
Right on, Deegster.
Yeah.
Mine is accomplishing things. Where you and
Mm.
we share so many similarities, I think, in our approach, but where we
Mhm.
might diverge is our conclusion. I'm about putting it out there and making it happen, and it's.
Okay.
But
Do you like directive hunting in PlanetSide too?
hmm,
Oop, all fuzzy.
yes,
Okay,
but at
I'm
this point
coalescing.
in time, I would say I think you could say yes. It's not
Okay.
a main part of my gameplay. I guess in the what was it, the Bartol player, I was at the.
That's exactly what I was kinda getting at,
I was trying to bring it up.
is that
Uh,
word. Bartle types, the classic.
Bartle types. See if I can't get it up here. But
I kinda wanna take the Bartle test again. I wonder if I would test differently now.
I think did you say you weren't achiever? You were like the somewhere between the killer and what was that other one at the top left?
I was I was very high on socializer, very low
Yeah.
on achiever, and explorer and killer were both right in the middle.
I was explorer and killer. That's
So
where I
just
was.
so people know what the Bartle typing is. Is you picture a two-dimensional axis, right? And on the vertical axis, you have um, people who are interested in people versus people who are interested in things. I think is a good way to put it. And the other axis is hang on, no, I'm saying that wrong.
No more. I got your back. Keep going.
Acting and interacting. It's acting and interacting. That's what it is. Is people who are interested in acting on things versus people who are interested on interacting with things. And the other axis is world versus players. So a killer is someone who's interested in acting on other players. A achiever is someone who's interested in acting on the world. An explorer is someone who's interested in interacting with the world, and a socializer is someone who's interested in interacting with players.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said that right. And those are the four the Bartle quadrants, roughly speaking.
Okay. I think we got it. Ready? Here we go. Can you refresh? Oh, reset. There we go.
Things happening.
Something's happening. Something's happening. Oh, I see the problem. There we go. All right.
What do we got? Oh, you pulled up your the Bartle slide.
I
Word.
sure did. I sure did.
Pictures with 1,000 words.
So we had the killer at the top left, achiever, explorer, socializer, and then
Mhm.
I overlaid it with the different Myers-Briggs and the artisan killer is the killer, idealist socializer, rational explorer.
I'm looking at it now.
I can make it even bigger.
Diplomatic, idealist explorer. Okay. Overlaying it with the Myers-Briggs, is that a connective leap you've made?
I did. I took a chance and went on the, because I started seeing threads. I like Myers-Briggs. I like the, was it the 9-wing whatever? I can't recall that one. The Enneagrams. That's always helped me quite a bit. And I started seeing similarities in the description of the Bartle players. I'm like, I bet you there's a cross-reference with the Myers-Briggs. Turns out there is. And I just found it and overlaid it here. I can't even remember why we brought that up.
You were talking about how you feel like we have some shared areas of concern, but you feel that you manifest a different outcome from those concerns.
Yeah.
Something like that.
You and I are very interested in player connection, interactions, forming connection, and putting that thing out into the world to build and introduce, collaborate. There's a lot of different ways to say it, but where I think you and I might diverge is my outlet for that was ServerSmash, co-founding that with Alleluia and Dotsor, and PlanetSideBattles, Record Smash, doing the Guinness World Records, the different podcasts, all the different gaming articles. I wanted to put it out there, just churn and produce. I don't know what it is. It's almost like a fixture that I have. Even this or the combined arms. It's just, there's something about the achieving of it, which is very alluring to me.
Yeah, I think I really had to learn that. I really had to learn to appreciate achievement. And you know the way I described ADHD as needing to have some external structure?
You and I share that, by the way. You and I have that.
ADHD?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Because for me, I have always had so little appreciation for external structure. I am so, like I don't deal well with authority figures. Like, I don't deal well with, like, people say I should do this program. I'm like, yeah, kind of fuck you. I'll do my own thing. That's kind of like my approach. I'm really stubborn, man. And it was really humbling to realize that making myself accountable to a structure could work. And the trick for me was for me to make the structure rather than to adopt someone else's.
Okay.
So
is it one
that's
of those things
why
where like you felt you had faith in it or trust in it when it came from you?
It's hard to describe, man. It's just God, why is that? I've never asked myself that question.
Introspective Deeg.
I was trying to think of all the any of the many examples I can access right in my head about times where I've recoiled from some kind of structure being placed on me. I don't know. Like I have this very immediate, quick sense of something not being right for me. I think part of it is being right for me, and I think that maybe part of it is fear related, like just worried. I think a lot of times because I'm so agreeable that I think that at the beginning is my only chance to say no to things. Because once I'm kind of on board, I'm not sure if I'll be able to fight for what's right for me. Like I'll just get kind of carried along. So that's part of it. So I learned to be cautious about making myself I learned to be cautious about adopting someone else's way of doing things, but I didn't know how to make my own way. And so a lot of times I would see the way that I took in oppositional terms. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Kind of a
that makes total
rebellious
sense.
type idea. And I guess the podcast is sort of rebellion because like I don't get paid to do the podcast. Like it's not how I make my living. It's sort of like saying, and even though I have taken a lot of pains to manifest these things I'm learning about myself in my work, in truth, I'm less attached to my work than I am to the podcast in many ways because And
Here, here.
maybe that's a good thing. It could be a good thing,
Yeah,
to
I
attach
consider that a
myself
good thing.
to. Like, I feel very proud of the podcasts I've done. I don't need to feel proud about my day-to-day work. I guess
Hmm.
one of the things that really differentiates them is that stuff I do at work is extraordinarily dependent upon a great deal of other people, whereas the podcast is something I control a very high amount of. So
Yeah.
it's a way to um, cut down on the noise of other people and take up space. That's a good way of putting it, I think. I've always had trouble with taking up space, and I do well. I've always been a performer. I'm a choir boy at heart. So if someone says it's my appointed time to shine and take up the space, I have no trouble with it at all. I will stand up in front of the biggest crowd and do whatever I'm supposed to be doing, and I'll do fine. But when it comes to an ambiguous situation, like invite me to a party of people who I only kind of half know, or put me on a college campus at the start of college after high school, and I will be in such a sad, sorry, confused state. I won't know how to orient myself. Um, and
Yeah, I
it's
remember when you were talking with Archie on one of your basement sites
mm,
that you mentioned the choir thing at that time,
yeah,
and you said
yeah,
that you had a performative aspect about you. Do you
I
feel
think
like
so.
do you feel that you've built on that or receded? How is that manifesting today?
Oh, I think that it's very much on display every time I turn my stream on, especially for podcasts. So, uh, no, it's like it's kind of how have I built on it? Hmm.
Take your time.
The there are moments in my life where I know I'm called upon to take up space, and I
Mm.
usually excel in those situations. So a time could be when I'm about to take a test and I need to get my shit together to perform on it, or when I'm about to step on stage. And for me, everything aligns. I know exactly what I need to do. The stakes are high, the incentives are clear. Um, or if I've done something wrong, I need to make amends. That's another situation where I know what needs to happen. It shrinks down the solution space of the world to a very small size. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the
I
thing about
get it.
performance that I like. The world reduces in size. My space in the world gets much larger. It becomes much more obvious what I should be and how I should be, and how I should apply myself to the situation. I think that's something at the core of it. I've never had trouble performing my whole life, being in front of people. It's never been a problem. Um, I took a public speaking class a few years ago, and it was I had different struggles than other people with it, but at some level, it was never a struggle for me. And this is before I ever streamed at all. Uh,
Was it Toastmasters? Were you doing Toastmasters?
no, it wasn't Toastmasters. It was something that my company had sponsored.
Hmm.
Some class that I think it was actually led by someone inside the company. It was some kind of program. I still have an award for winning like the MVP of that class. Um, it's floating around somewhere. It was a cool moment. But
That's so interesting. Fun fact: I used to be in
stepping up.
choir.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, before I hit puberty, I was the acapella. Was it? Had a high
Oh,
voice,
you,
and
me
now
too, bro. Tenors. Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah, and now I have a much more bass sounding voice when I sing.
Oh
So
yeah. I don't know. Your voice still sounds a little tenory to me.
it does. But when I sing, it goes down an octave or two. It's very interesting.
I would like to hear that.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, no, I grew up singing church choir because my mom was a choir director, and I actually had the opportunity to sing in barbershop quartet when I was a senior in high school.
Nice.
That was hilarious and amazing. Uh, I did a bunch more of that years later. But I mean, to come back to it, I think if I could erase all the hemming and hawing and just go straight to a point, it would be
We can
that
hem and haw. That's okay.
performance affords me permission to take up space
Yeah.
that I've always my whole life in normal life struggled to do. And to take up space is just simply to manifest myself in the world. It's an introvert's dilemma is you need to be in the world. How? Um and yeah, something like that. The podcast is my excuse to say what I think and
Yeah.
do what I think is right and best. And
That's super
there's a lot of good
interesting.
things.
You and I overlap again there. I was more brought
Mm,
up to instead of taking up space, you don't draw attention to yourself. Modesty was a very big part of that parental element there. So
mm,
I feel very uncomfortable when I ask for attention, and
mm,
so being in the military again has has forced me to do that, where we are required to write our own performance appraisals before
mhm.
they go up, and that's very hard to do, to say like, oh, I led all these efforts and I did all these things. It's like, oh, it's so cringe, but we all have to do it.
It doesn't come
uh
naturally to anyone, does it?
it's
You got to learn.
Yeah. And so when I went for community manager, that again was really embarrassing for me to say, hey, I'm put my name in the hat, and now to do it again.
Or
Now that,
PlanetSide for RPG
yeah,
community
yeah.
manager.
For
Yeah.
after I got out of the military, I want to work from my favorite game, and it's open right now. So I did it again. It feels a little bit less
Mhm.
embarrassing, but I can still feel that discomfort to say, ah,
Mm.
I applied for it. I think I can do the job. Um, it's yeah, that permission to take up space. I definitely understand that. It took,
Yeah, dude.
and in many ways, I feel like I'm taking it too far with some of the things I say, like, hey, I'm co-founder of PlanetSide blah 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 blah. Like that's there's a certain bragginess that I feel that really makes me revolt at it.
Yeah. 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 The discomfort of sort of self-advocacy of explaining yourself to other people. It's hard because if you say something, it's the moment where the truth of the matter really comes out, because if that thing about you is really true, it should feel easy to say, right?
Right.
If that thing about you was kind of bullshit and maybe you were kind of lucky or just in the right spot, or if it wasn't really if you didn't really earn it in some way or you didn't feel like you earned it, then it just comes out like, oh yeah, I did that thing.
Yeah, kind of. I was there, sort of. But no, yeah, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. That
Yeah, I
that
just
was
find like you just got to find the common the thing that connects to your fellow person. So one of the things I really tried to do in the last when I started this new job is to not hide my hobbies or my interests from my coworkers. Like if they ask for a link, I'll send them a link to my YouTube channel. It's been a real interesting experiment to do that because previously I've been kind of like wanting to keep things separate, but now I'm trying to get things more integrated.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it makes it easier to talk about yourself when the thing you're doing is not in some way hiding from some part of yourself. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But when I explain it to my coworkers, I'll say that I'm a hobbyist podcaster, which I think is true. It is what I do is a hobbyist type grade type activity. And I'll say I've been a passionate gamer my whole life. And I just want to do something creative with it. Also true. I probably won't say that I do it as a vehicle for self transformation and actualization. That's a little bit much to bring up in light conversation,
Right, right.
but that is the truth.
Yeah, I totally get that. Especially, when I was in the military, being PlanetSide Battles and ServerSmash, not at all anything. And when we broke the Guinness World Record in 2015, of course, I was beside myself. But What am I gonna go to work and be like, hey, I broke the Guinness World Record for a
How
game.
the hell do you tell people about that, right?
I don't. You just don't.
It's still
you just kinda
hard.
go to work the next day.
Still hard.
You're like, and I'm just sitting there, doing my job, and I'm like, we just broke a Guinness World Record.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nowadays, things like the shift from when I started working professionally to now, where there seems to be, to me, on behalf of management, a better effort to integrate those dissociative elements. And for us, it's like morale events where we'll all show up, in teams now, but we'll all show up virtually in the same like coffee type discussion, and we'll just talk about ourselves, or there'll be like a round robin of, hey, say something that no one here really knows about you. And mine's usually, I go salsa dancing like 4 times a week.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I know like 19
That's cool.
different dances. So,
dude, that's cool. That's brave.
I know, but those things are like, those never really pop up. You're not just like, hey, customer, here's our product. By the way, I go swing dancing and ballroom dancing all the time.
That is a way to help people learn to like take up space, right? Yeah. It's all about that. And that's a structured way to give a little bit of space to everybody. It's beautiful. Beautiful. And that's like we talked a lot about like how I learn to take up my space, and maybe a little bit about how you learn to take up your space. But like the cool thing about an interview or a conversation is, when you're the host, is you get to help the other person take up their space.
That's right.
And when it works, man, fuck, it feels good.
That's right, Deegsta. You can take up all the space you want to, my man.
Watch out now. Watch out now. Careful.
Yeah. Man, I feel like this is a good one. I really, really enjoyed our conversation, the flow to it, the things that I heard from you today. You're the PlanetSide shaman and more, and that's the cool part is, success for your podcast, the things that you're doing. It's really cool to watch, and
appreciate that, brother.
This isn't me being all magnanimous and saying, thank you for coming and blah blah blah. Like, my man, I am really happy to see your content and
comes from the heart.
What you're about.
Yeah,
it's cool.
I hear that loud and clear, brother, and it's right back at you. It makes me so happy to see you doing the StratSide stuff, to see you speaking your truth, taking up space, making your mark in an unambiguous way. It's awesome, dude. Yeah. I hope you keep it up. I hope you have I hope I'm the first of many guests you have on, as a matter of fact.
Oh man, like you said, it's a lot of work, and most nowadays, my heart is a lot into the cultural, the doing of things. It fuels me. It gives me it's awesome.
There's power in that. Knowing what fuels you, knowing what floats your boat.
It's all about, where can I find more Deeg, my man? So, on the top right, right underneath his right here, where he is at Deeg Thoughts. That's his Twitter handle, and also Deeg Thoughts is his YouTube. Just search it there; it'll pop right up.
True. Yeah, it's easy. YouTube.com/Deeg Thoughts.
Here, I'll just put it in here. HTTPS youtube.com/Deeg Thoughts.
Yeah.
Deeg, I really appreciated this, man. This was good.
Me too. This has been fun.
So, anything new coming up that we should be excited for?
Well, right now I'm mainly concerned with moving. And
right. But closing on the Seattle.
In terms of what's going on, though, like I mentioned, I have been getting sort of neck deep in the new Guild Wars expansion. I expect to be doing interviews with Guild Wars creators and maybe developers. We'll see. I mentioned that earlier. Maybe that could happen. I'd be excited if it does in the next few weeks to months. I usually tend to kind of skim off a community and just kind of like talk to a bunch of people, and then my ADHD nature will kick on and I'll move on to the next interest. So started the year when Osher came out. I did a lot of PlanetSide stuff. and now I'm focusing on Guild Wars for a little bit.
Right on. So, as Bacon put down there, youtube.com/DeegThoughts, a lot of more Guild Wars 2 content coming up. If you should, I would definitely recommend check out Deeg in the future. And up next, 100 videos.
That's right. I've also been just streaming a lot more, just like when I play video games.
Yeah.
I have sort of a tortured relationship with streaming gaming, but I've been getting brave about it lately, and it's been fun to connect with people day over day, and
Yeah.
it's just kind
Whenever
of
I see you on,
casual.
I'll just
And
pop right in, and you're always
yeah,
good about
I
it.
just keep.
So
Hell yeah, I love when people drop by and say, "Hey," it's my favorite part of those experiences. That's why I do it. And yeah, nothing specific to announce in terms of podcasts, unfortunately, right now. But
that's okay.
soon.
It's up and coming.
Yeah.
Deegster,
What
thanks
about
for
you,
your
man?
time, my man. I appreciate it.
What do you have coming up?
Ooh, I'm more of like a as it comes to me. I hadn't done a StratSide in over 8 months because I didn't feel that inspiration.
Wow,
like when I
really?
wrote my book, it took
Okay.
me 6 years to get it out on Amazon, and I'm just now getting the second one out here in May. But I'm a slow cooker in many ways, so it's crazy. But I really want to
So
do an
cooker's good, increases
expansion.
the flavor.
Yeah, I want to do an expansion on Zergfits and Elitefits, kind of the dynamic interplay between the two. I opened that can of worms with combined arms, and I loved it. So I would love to expand upon just the social aspect of that and how that contributes. Because to me, one of the most, call it disheartening, call it my want, is I want the Elitefits, I want the Zergfits to understand each other. At least have the opportunity to see. Because I've played with Future Crew, as a friend. I've played with the Devil Dogs. And
yeah.
hearing them talk about each other is the same way you describe hearing your friends going at each other. And I'm like, guys, come on. Some people are as bad as you say. But really, Tav, Scourge of the Server, when I met them with ServerSmash and got to know them better, they're just people. They're just good at the game. They're good at clicking heads. A-Flick, he's good at the game. He's a cool guy. And I want that understanding to at least, I want that bridge to be there. And to me, Combined Arms was a way to make that bridge a reality, whether you wanted it or not. There it is. And that's the sort of thing that drives me in PlanetSide in many ways. So I imagine that's another thing that's slow cooking in my brain right now. Trying to figure out.
I'll be excited to see what dish comes out. Because I'm super interested in that exact same problem. Maybe it makes me really happy to see more people being interested in the reconciliation of that gap rather than in sort of widening it.
Yeah, and the tough part is the data, because I'm a huge data nerd. I need data to make me feel the space that I'm taking up is secure. That authority that Kamikaze was speaking to. I am very interested in authority, and I didn't speak for many, many years because I didn't feel I had that yet. But now I feel thrust into it in a way that this is what I know it to be. I think it's true after 10 years of PlanetSide, and I don't think the bridge is as on fire as everyone thinks it is. It's just, do you want to understand? And if not, maybe this talk isn't for you. So,
I think you're right. I think it's not as bad as people say it is.
And it's just a matter of, to me, what the coolest thing about Combined Arms talk that I just did a few days ago was, it wasn't just that I'm like, here's my opinion. I had facts that I was able to produce, courtesy of Varunda and courtesy of Maelstrom, PS2 alerts. I could figure out, like, the top 50 base captures for the last year or two, 80% of them are all outfits with more than 500 players. Blew me away. I had no idea. And the rest of them are midfits. When you take Varunda's data, which is every base capture for the past 6 months, not just alerts, then it's pretty much the same thing, except one small fit under 100 made it in the top 50. And all that tells me is that there's something going on there. there's something going on that warrants an investigation to try and promote understanding, to build connections. It's not a stick it in your face, ha ha ha. I hear what the Elitefits are saying, the hardcore infantry. I hear what the combined arms are saying, the casual players.
Mhm.
There is a bridge there. And for me, the way that I bridge it, I tend to want to bridge it, is with data in a way that people can look at and say, you know what? That looks like a solid foundation. I may not agree with it, but I get where you're coming from. That's it.
Yeah.
I walk away
Yeah.
with that peace of mind.
Data's clean. Data's beautiful.
Data is beautiful.
That's really exciting.
Love that subreddit too.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Deeg. I
Cool,
appreciate
man.
you, my
Well, I'm
man.
excited. Likewise.
So we're going to go ahead and, yeah. I think we're just going to top it off. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to, who should we raid? We have 16 viewers. Let's find a PlanetSide
That's the best
player
part.
to raid.
That's the best
Yeah,
part
baby.
of Twitch.
Let's
Is
find
raiding
a
at the end.
PlanetSide player to
I
raid.
kind of miss it, to be honest with you, now that I'm on YouTube.
Yeah, the YouTube thing, I heard you talking about that with Kamikaze. I can understand the allure of YouTube. I haven't quite made that decision for myself yet, but we're getting there.
Pros and cons.
You know what? Lepelos. Here we come, Lep. From Merc and T.R. Connery. Where are you? So let's go ahead and start the raid. Oh, there's a countdown. The Twitch viewer thing has
Lepelos!
like all of these things for that you would normally have in Twitch, like raiding. All right, raid, boom. Alrighty.
Cool.
Let's go ahead and start the countdown. Thank you all for coming.